Welcome everybody to the DTTE late night live stream. This is just an experiment to try to see how this goes. I guess we could start off this live stream by answering some questions per se, okay? So, I did get a few audio questions in my email, so we're just gonna go ahead and answer a few of them.
Hey, I've been following your channel for the past 3 years, and I really like your work, but, where the hell is Thomas Comedies in the Magic Railroad? Seriously, it's been delayed more times than Cuphead, mate!
Well, to be fair, the film is taking a bit longer, especially regarding the last two parts, but we are working as much as we can to get it out as soon as possible, but just please be patient, and I promise you that the end product will turn out well. So, okay, next question.
Where the hell is Thomas Comedies and Magic Railroad film?
I don't know what a phlegm is, but I'm sure that we'll get the movie out soon. So just be patient. So why do I get the feeling this is gonna be the next few questions? So I don't know. How many times can you answer the same question?
Are you still working on that Thomas parody film?
When's the Thomas Comedies movie coming out?
Where the heck is Thomas Comedies and Magic Railroad film?
Are you still working on making that Thomas parody?
I'm gonna unsubscribe if you don't finish this movie right now.
Why is it taking so long?
You must force yourself to finish the film!
Oh, we got a call on the stream. Yes, hello! Please answer your question. It better not be about this stinking movie.
I like turtles.
Is that it?
Yes. Oh, and when is TTTES episode 2 coming out? Was it something I said?
Hello and welcome everyone to the Marr Show. And today we're gonna take a look at Thomas and the Magic Railroad. I've been wanting to review all the Thomas films, but I didn't know whether to put it on my Thomas Comedies channel or just do it on the Marr Show. But you know what? I'm saying screw it, and I'm just gonna be reviewing all of the films, not in order, but like over the course of time on the show, because I'm a huge fan of Thomas the Tank Engine. And I figured now's the time to just go ahead and start talking about this film. I have to admit, over the past few years, I've been kind of mixed about the film. I remember when the film came out back in 99 or 2000, between that time era, I was extremely hyped for this movie. I had a bunch of the merchandise that were tie-ins for the movie and stuff. And I remember me and my family getting together and going to Nashville and going to this gigantic theater. I forgot what it was, but it was a really nice theater, and watching it, and there was a huge crowd of people, and it was amazing. But over time, as I've grown older, becoming more mature, I'll just say mature, to say the least, and not to mention the fact that more info about the film has come out, such as the fact that there was a director's cut that featured a lot of stuff that could have helped improve the movie and so forth. So I have to admit, the film itself has kind of been mixed on me, especially the fact that I've countlessly had to rewatch the film over and over again just so I can write the script for a movie that's been in development hell for so long that it has physically and mentally scarred me for every year that I don't release it and someone asks about... What was I going with this again? Okay, before I continue on, let me just say, I don't mind people asking when the movie's coming out, just please be patient. But back to the subject of the film at hand, it's been a while since I actually sat down and watched it as a film, and not trying to rewatch it to get jokes or editing it in Adobe Premiere or anything like that. I meant actually sit down and watch it as a film. And you know, it's okay. It's not one of the greatest films out there, but it's not one of the worst Thomas specials I've ever seen. There are far worse. This one's sort of like in that middle ground area, you would say. Thomas and his friends are being threatened by an evil diesel named Diesel 10, who's looking for a lost steam engine to destroy her. Meanwhile, Mr. Conductor, who has always been traveling between Sodor and Shining Time, is losing his gold dust. In the middle of this crisis, Lily meets up with Junior on the way to visit her lonely grandfather, Bennett Stone. It's up to Thomas, Mr. Conductor, Lily, and all the other friends to find the lost engine, stop Diesel 10, and regain the gold dust. Now, even though I have a lot of nostalgic factor with this film, rewatching it, the film itself is kind of cluttered in a way. I mean, it's not like confusing like, say, Kingdom Hearts or anything like that, but one issue that I kind of have with the movie is that the story is kind of confusing in a way. I grew up reading the Railway series and watching the original show and stuff, and one of the things that really captivated me, that made the Railway series so unique, is the fact that the Rev Audrey, as he wrote the original stories, always loosed them based on real-life events that occurred during his lifetime. The most popular example I can think of is the book Enterprise and Engines, where in fact the book was written at the time when steam engines were being replaced by diesels, during the time when British railways were beginning to modernize the railway and using diesels because they were more reliable and so forth. The fact that he wrote the stories based on these real events that occurred made this seem real. It made like Sodor was a place that you could actually visit, and it's what makes the original series so unique, the fact that the way they filmed it and made the story so realistically that it just made you feel like a place that you could go to, that it was a place that was taking place in this universe. And for this film to have it where Sodor seems to be a separate universe from Shining Time kind of breaks that barrier in a way. There's some plot holes that gets kind of confusing in regards with the gold dust and the Magic Railroad. Like the fact that we see Lady running on the Magic Railroad, but then as the film gets ended, or when the film is ending, we only see Lady talking to Thomas and seeing them celebrate getting the gold dust. Does she going back and forth between the Magic Railroad, or does she run it once in the blue moon and it's on Sodor as a shunter engine? It's something that they didn't really explain as the aftermath of what happened to Lady or the Magic Railroad or Burnett, and that kind of makes the ending seem kind of like not tying up all the loose ends in the film. And something that did kind of bother me a bit was the fact that there's not really that big threat in a way. Like, the biggest threat in this film is just seeing Diesel 10 trying to destroy Lady, but in terms of like the Magic Railroad ending or like Shining Time stuff, there's no real big threat. The only one being Diesel 10 just wanting to destroy Lady. There's not really much care into, like, say, Shining Time looking like it was destroyed by a mini tornado or something. There's not really that real sense of major consequences to, like, having Lady run on the Magic Railroad. Or at least to me, at least. It seems like the story has some problems with like explaining very well as to what's the major consequences to like them losing the gold dust, or the major consequences being of why Lady won't be running the railroad or something. It's something that does kind of bother me in that sense. Another issue that I kind of have with that I think a lot of us can agree is the fact that most of the time in the film is pointed out to the humans and the trains are just kind of there for the ride. Because, like, we don't really see, like, the engines engaging that much. Sure, we see, like, Thomas searching for Mr. Conductor and so forth, and we do see James in the jam with Junior as they're trapped in the smelters with Diesel 10, but other than that, the engines are just there for the sake of being there. They don't really play a huge role into the actual plot. And while the human scenes are very well acted and are pretty entertaining at times, especially with Junior, it's kind of disappointing to see the fact that they advertise so much of Thomas being his big picture, when in reality he's just kind of like a background character in a whole lot. I think the film would have done a lot better if they wrote it to having the trains playing more into the story instead of just joining along for the ride. But the human scenes are not terrible. I do enjoy the acting and some of the dialogue and the story. While it is a bit clustered, I do enjoy how the characters interact and so forth. Of course, Junior steals the show always, but we get a lot of great performances by Peter Fonda, Marr Wilson, and even Stacey Jones is in this movie with a lack of schema. I like Schema. He's amazing. I mean, how can you not like Schema? The fact he's not in this film disappoints me to no end, and no one's bothered to. One thing I really like about this movie is how it's filmed. It's a very beautiful film that's very nice and calm and paced well, and you get some really beautiful shots in Pennsylvania, not to mention the fact that we get to see the models on the big screen and it looks fantastic. Granted, one issue that is kind of a nitpick is the fact that how when they were filming the models, they had to move all of the stuff and sets to the United States, and I think it probably would have been much more easier and less cost effective to have the models just kept being filmed in Shepperton Studios for the movie. And that does play into the part that after the film ended, when they was transferring the models and sets back to the UK, some of them were lost or even damaged while shipping. So I think it would have been better just to keep it, because we do see some continuity errors, like we see Bulgy's Bridge next to 2 lanes of tracks, or Nafa Station, how it's replaced with mostly with trees and the city behind it is just kind of, well, disappeared. But I mean, it's still filmed very well and it looks beautiful. Though one thing that does kind of scare me a bit is how Sodor is kind of a ghost town. We see the engines running about pulling trains, but whenever we see like Thomas and Gordon talking at a station, or Thomas and Percy at Nafford, we just see them just kind of staying there. We don't see like passengers going in and out. There's lack of a sense of busyness in the railway. And I understand deeply that had they tried to get real actors to try to fill a Sodor, it would take a lot more time, a lot of actors to try to fill in the gap of using green screen and stuff like that. I understand, but I really wish they would have added some sort of busyness to make Sodor look busy by having actors going in and out of the coaches and rocking around and so forth. To make Sodor look more realistic instead of like this very empty town with engines running about, and I just realized that's Misty Island right there. Oh, I forgot to mention the voice actors. This is the very first Thomas film to have individual voice actors, and I'm not counting the Japanese version of Thomas where they have voices. I mean, just for us in the US, this is the first time to see Thomas have a unique voice. All the voices are really great. I think for the longest time, this was how I thought the engines actually sounded. I really loved Thomas's young but mature voice, and even though I thought Henry would sound a lot more like this, I do enjoy the nice, calm, poetic-like voice that they got for Henry. But yes, face it, the ones that steal the show in terms of voices is Neil Crome and Kevin Frank. And while Kevin Frank voices as Henry and then Neil Crome does Gordon, they both does a fantastic job of voicing as Diesel 10, Splatter, and Dodge, because you can tell they were having a lot of fun with the dialogue and improvisation. And to me, in my personal opinion, even though I like the CGI voice of Diesel 10, Neil Crome as Diesel 10, hands down, best voice ever. You can tell he's having so much fun being demonic but yet goofy at the same time. Although, let's talk about the new engines real quick. We'll get Diesel 10 first out of the way since I already mentioned him. He's the best one. In fact, out of the entire cast that was introduced in this movie, we see Diesel 10 a lot more, and we actually eventually get to see him in an episode in season 17 of the show. The other 3 characters that were introduced in this film are very forgettable. Like, we got Lady, who is Lady. She's a magical engine, and yeah, not much to her. Although in the original script, it was revealed that Lady wasn't really meant to talk. She was meant to communicate with whistling, and Thomas could only understand her, which I think would have made a pretty interesting character trait. And then Splatter and Dodge are just goofy diesels. They don't really do that much, and it was revealed that the models were lost while trying to transfer everything back over to Shepperton Studios. Although have the models been safely transferred, I couldn't really imagine much story uses because the characters aren't really that developed. While they have some funny dialogue and interactions with Diesel 10, there's not really a whole lot to gain in terms of storytelling with them. Having them models lost, I think, isn't really a big loss in my opinion. Although, to be fair, I wish the models would have been a bit more recovered for preservation's sake. Now, whenever someone talks about this film, you can't ignore the fact of the film having been cut tremendously. And I actually did read the original draft, or the director's cut script, years ago. You can easily get it on some website. I forgot what it was. I'll probably put the name of it here on the screen. But after reading the script, the only thing that a lot of people would probably ask, would it make the film better? Well, honestly, I don't really think so. While we would have got an entertaining villain with P.T. Boomer, in terms of like it giving the trains more screen time or explain the plot a little bit, I'd probably say no. And there's a lot of petitions going out to get the director's cut released. But I don't really see that happening anytime soon. I'm not going to say it's like something that's not going to happen. I mean, eventually Lost Media does get its way back into the limelight, like the original version of The Thief and the Cobbler. But in terms of like the director's cut of this film, it'll probably years before we actually see it. But there's that slim chance. So overall, Magic Railroad, it's an okay film. It's not a horrible film, but it's not that great in terms of how it's aged and how I kind of look at the film overall. Now don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff in this film that I do enjoy, like the voice actors they got for the trains, the way they filmed it is very nice, and the actors themselves are really well done, and there's some generally good scenes in this film. But at the same time, there are some stuff that kind of block it for me to put it higher on my list of favorite Thomas films. Like, the plot itself isn't really that explained and kind of confusing at times with some plot holes. And as they're trying to explain the plot in some scenes, it does make the movie kind of slow a bit. And again, Sodor, there's no humans around, so it's Ghost Town, Sodor, Mississippi. And again, one thing that did bother me as a kid, as well as other people, the fact that the film focuses more on the humans instead of like the trains. You could have had some of the engines involved a bit more aside from Thomas. And I think how they focuses more on the engines instead of the humans, or trying to balance it out 50-50, it'll be a lot better, because I want to see Thomas and not the humans. I want to see the choo-choos with the chugging and the puffing, with the hipping and the hopping, so they don't know what the jazz is all about. Not to mention, it is kind of hard to really talk about this film in the current state that the show is, because this is something that me and Challenger has brought up in terms of like when they're trying to bring back Shining Time Station. The fact that they've been trying to keep the series close to like the railway series as possible, being realistic, and the fact that we don't really get a mention of Diesel 10, Lady, or the Magic Railroad that much anymore. And so this film kind of feels out of place in regards to how the television series itself has evolved and adapted over time. So it's in that kind of weird era in a way. And while Shining Time Station fans will enjoy it, probably, a lot of fans, especially those in the UK, detest this film because of its Americanization and the fact it just feels out of place in the whole television series and future specials lineup. But I mean, it's still a decent film overall. It's not anything great, but I did have a good time watching it. Some nostalgic value, but overall, if I had to grade it with all the other Thomas films, it'll be kind of in the middle, below middle, I want to say. I mean, it's not anything like Tale of the Brave or The Adventure Begins, but it's not a bad film compared to like A Day of the Diesels or Misty Island Rescue, so I do recommend watching it. And that's all the time we have for today, folks. So, if you'd like to leave your thoughts on today's movie, just comment below. And if you want to find this movie, it's pretty easy to find and cheap on both VHS and DVD. So thank you guys so much for at least watching this with you. I hope you're looking forward to more Thomas reviews on my show. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next Delmar episode. Bye bye!